This is an experience that took place a couple of years ago, but it is something that still completely occupies my mind to this day. At the time, I was working steadily as an actress and living completely by myself in a private apartment. Being alone in the city could sometimes feel isolating, but I generally enjoyed having my own space. The only frequent visitor I ever really had was my boyfriend, Ryan, who would routinely come over to my home to spend time with me, to help maintain the apartment. I also employed a full-time maid named Jacqueline. Over the years, Jacqueline and I had grown incredibly close to the point where she felt much less like an employee and significantly more like an older sister to me. Everything was going smoothly until Jacqueline unexpectedly needed to request a temporary leave of absence for about 3 or 4 days. She explained that she had to travel back to her own home to sort out some urgent property paperwork. However, because she did not want to leave me entirely without assistance during her brief absence, she took it upon herself to arrange for a substitute maid named Misa to cover her shifts. Misa was a black woman, and she possessed an absolutely gorgeous appearance that was immediately striking. On her very first day on the job, I arrived back at the apartment after finishing up my work duties for the day. Walking through the front door, I immediately noticed Misa standing in the kitchen, diligently washing the dishes. As I continued walking further into the apartment, my eyes caught something unexpected sitting right outside my bedroom door. It was a pair of shoes belonging to Ryan. My heart immediately started racing, and I found myself running toward the room with a sense of excitement. I instantly assumed that he had decided to drop by unexpectedly to give me a wonderful surprise. When I finally pushed open the bedroom door, my assumption turned out to be correct. Ryan was sitting right there on the edge of the mattress. He was hopefully waiting for my arrival, holding a beautiful bouquet of fresh roses in his hand. We sat down together and began to talk about our respective days. Usually, whenever Ryan visited me like this, he would bring along something delicious for us to eat. But on this particular evening, he had arrived completely empty-handed. I leaned in and gave him a warm kiss before pulling out my phone so we could order some dinner through Uber Eats. When the food finally arrived, Ryan barely ate anything at all, but he was visibly in an incredibly romantic mood. After we finished with the meal, I went into the bathroom to freshen myself up after a long day. I decided to change out of the short dress I had been wearing and slipped into a triangle bikini instead. We spent the rest of the evening enjoying high-quality time together, sharing plenty of close hugs and affectionate kisses. However, as the night progressed into the early morning hours, an unsettling sensation began to take hold of me. For some inexplicable reason, I kept feeling an eerie vibe through the night, as though someone was silently standing just outside our closed door, waiting patiently in the dark hallway. The next morning, Ryan woke up and left the apartment much earlier than usual. As for my own schedule, I was incredibly lucky because I had absolutely no shooting sessions lined up for the next 3 days, giving me some much-needed time to relax. I decided to dress comfortably for the day, choosing a light green maxi dress. Around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I decided to give Ryan a phone call just to say good morning to him. Even though it was already past midday, I still wanted to connect. However, Ryan did not pick up the call at all, and his phone line was completely busy with someone else. With Ryan unavailable, my mind began to wander back to the strange feelings I had experienced the previous night. I seriously considered approaching Misa to ask her if she had been wandering around the hallway while we were sleeping. However, a sudden wave of hesitation washed over me, and it felt as though something internal was actively stopping me from bringing it up. I also couldn't help but notice that Misa seemed to be talking on her phone almost the entire time she was working. Even while she was dusting the furniture or cleaning the surfaces, the phone was pressed to her ear. Despite the constant distraction, she worked with incredible speed, which made it feel impossible for me to find a right moment to interrupt her or ask her to stop. To distract myself, I sat down on the living room sofa and started watching a K-drama. After a little while, the thought of Ryan crossed my mind again, and I decided to try calling him one more time. Once again, he did not answer, and his phone was still busy, leaving me unable to reach him. By the following day, the situation had not improved at all, and Ryan still had not bothered to call me back. I was sitting in the living room when I noticed Misa abruptly hang up her phone and immediately start working on the kitchen utensils. I was feeling incredibly bored, so I decided to eat my lunch on the sofa while mindlessly scrolling through reels on my phone. Suddenly, that familiar, creepy sensation washed over me entirely. I felt certain that someone else was present in the apartment. But this time, a distinct sound was echoing directly from the inside of my bedroom. Filled with intense hesitation, I slowly walked over and opened the door. To my absolute horror, I saw a couple lying directly on my bed. As I stepped closer to see them more clearly, the shock hit me like a physical blow. It was Ryan, and he was cuddling on the mattress with Misa. I stood there, completely furious and frozen in place. Right before my eyes, Ryan reached over and unhooked her orange bra. Both of them were so completely engrossed in each other that they remained entirely unaware that I was standing in the doorway watching their every move. A wave of intense anger boiled up inside me, and I was just about to scream at the top of my lungs because I could not bear to watch this betrayal continue for another second. But right before a sound could escape my throat, a sudden loud bell cut through the air. The sound rang out again and again, shattering the scene. Suddenly, my eyes flew open, and I realized I was waking up from a deep dream. The betrayal hadn't been real, but someone was accurately and persistently ringing my actual front doorbell. I checked the clock and realized it was already 9 o'clock in the evening. I had accidentally fallen fast asleep on the sofa while eating my lunch earlier that afternoon. I rushed over to the front entrance as quickly as I could and ripped the door open. To my immense relief, Jacqueline was standing on the threshold. She had finally returned early from her leave. Once Jacqueline stepped inside, I sat her down and explained every single detail of the terrifying nightmare I had just experienced involving Ryan and Misa. Jacqueline listened quietly, and then admitted to me that she had actually felt a very similar sense of unease regarding Misa's presence before. Hearing her say that made me rethink everything. I began to realize that I had likely just been letting my mind run wild, overthinking things, and creating baseless suspicions, entirely because of how beautiful Misa was.
It was the day when I was supposed to meet my long-distance boyfriend, Joe. We had been in a relationship for almost 5 months now, and we had never met within that time frame. I first met him through a dating app. I slowly figured that he was a nice guy, so I decided to meet him. I told him that I would go over to Whittier, Alaska, where he lived. I had already packed my stuff 3 days before this day and was ready to go, so I headed out from my home and called a taxi. After getting in the taxi, I took a selfie of myself and sent him. He replied with a cute heart emoji. After about an hour or so, I reached the airport. There I took another cute selfie of myself with the full airport view and shared him again. After boarding the plane, I slept during the entire flight. "Excuse me, ma'am, you were supposed to depart here." An air hostess woke me up when we reached there. I had already booked a hotel for my stay, so I took a cab and went there. I called Joe, but his phone was engaged, so I went to take a shower to remove the travel fatigue from my body. After the shower, I checked my phone and saw messages from Joe saying that he would be waiting for me at the restaurant at 9 p.m. He had sent a cute emoji along with the address of the restaurant. There was about 2 hours left, so I quickly got dressed and put my makeup on. After that, I wore the cutest shoes I owned and I had brought with me. I called a cab and told him the address I wanted to go, but his response was a bit weird. He canceled the ride. I tried calling multiple cabs, but they all denied. And finally, after half an hour, I found one driver who was ready to go. I got in the cab but was creeped out by what he said to me. "Listen, ma'am, it's not like it's any of my business, but the place you are going, just be careful." I reached the place on about 8:55 p.m., so I wasn't late at all. I looked around, and that place was giving me weird, creepy vibes. There was absolutely no one around that area, as if it had been abandoned for years. So I tried calling Joe. Again, his phone was engaged. As I disconnected the call, a message popped up from Joe. "Just come inside. I'm waiting for you." I looked over toward the restaurant, and I was still having that feeling inside. It was like my mind telling me to stop and don't go there. but I still walked toward the entry gate. As I was walking, my each step felt heavy to me. I opened the gate and the door opened with a sound. There were many people inside, and all of their heads turned toward me at the same time. I was feeling more and more anxious by the time. I found Joe sitting in the left corner seat looking at me with a serious face, which was weird because he was never a serious person. Joe is one of those guys that would make you laugh even during a serious conversation. I smiled, waved at him, and started walking there. But as I was walking, I noticed there were many people there, but no one was talking, and everyone was eating the same weird, unappetizing looking dish. I sat there at the table where Joe was sitting and greeted him, but he was still looking all serious and not saying anything. Whenever I spoke, everyone's heads would turn towards me, which made me feel anxious and agitated. The waiter came to take our orders, but I did not even take a look at the menu yet, so I picked it up, and there was already one dish on it. It was the same one that everyone was eating. So I asked him if I could ask the chef to make me a hamburger. He looked at me with an annoyed and weird expression, but still nodded. Joe did not order anything, and he was still not saying a single word. The waiter went to the kitchen, and I turned my focus toward Joe. "Are you mad at me or something?" I asked him, but he did not speak or lift his head to talk to me. At the same time, the waiter returned with the exact same dish in his hand from the menu that everyone was eating and placed it in front of Joe, and he immediately started eating it like he was possessed or something. I asked the waiter how much time it will take for him to bring me my burger, but he did not reply and went back to the kitchen. I started to feel annoyed from Joe's reactions because the place was creepy enough to make me feel scared, and I thought that it would be even worse if he was pulling some kind of crazy prank on me. I also had a random crazy thought that it was not him, so I decided to go from there without letting him know. I excused myself from him, saying that I needed to inform my parents that I had safely reached. Joe nodded his head, and this time I was sure that this is not Joe, because Joe knew that my parents were dead and I'd grown up in an orphanage. As I went outside the restaurant, multiple notifications popped up. It was from Joe. There were about 20 calls and messages asking where I was. I looked back at the restaurant, and it wasn't there. Instead, there was an abandoned building there. I saw the same cab driver who was still parked there. I asked him why he hasn't left yet, so he replied, "Weren't you here to take pictures or so? Sometimes weird kids come here to take pictures of this haunted place, but they never come out, and I was thinking of leaving if you did not come back outside after a bit more time." I got in the cab and asked him to hurry back to my hotel. When I reached, I called Joe. This time, his phone got connected. He was so angry, he told me that I never reached the address he texted me, and I was not answering his calls either. Apparently, he waited for me about 2 hours and then left. I told him everything, but he did not believe me, saying that this place I was talking about does not exist at all. After that, I checked my phone. The address was different from before. The messages from before were also gone. I checked the cab driver's numbers, and there were only those numbers who denied taking me there, saying, "Give me a real address, man, and don't pull a prank over me. I'm canceling this ride." This happened about 50 years ago. Now I am 67 now, and I have told this story to almost all of my friends, and they all suggested to me that the person who saved me that day was a ghost. But for me, he was an angel sent by God, only and only for saving me. At the time, I was just 17. I lived in the center of town area with my parents. My father was a businessman, while my mother was a doctor. Her hospital was on the edge of town. One particular day, I was driving through the winding, sloppy mountain road, and the weather was not in the mood to let me go. It was raining, along with thunderstorms. My mother had asked me not to go anywhere, but there was no way I could have stayed a full day alone in my home. So I was driving to visit one of my friends who lived in a remote village area with his parents. It was raining heavily, so I was in a hurry to get there, so I was driving a little fast. All of a sudden, my car ditched against the mountain and fell from the cliff about 80 feet down. My car kept on rolling through the slope and landed on a tree that almost passed right through my car, dividing it into almost 2 parts. When my car landed and struck the tree, my head slammed on the driving wheel and I passed out. I don't know for how long I was in that condition, but when I regained consciousness, I found myself struck beneath the car seat. I was all covered in scratches and cuts, but the worst thing was that during the forceful strike with the tree, my head suffered heavy damage, and I realized that I had a huge cut across the top of my head. I could feel my warm blood pouring out from my head to my neck and backbone. I somehow tried to get out of the car and looked around me. My car was totally destroyed. I thought about my accident and realized that I was about 15 miles away from the town area. I was completely down the slopes and couldn't see anyone to get any help. I was not in a condition to scream or shout to call anyone for my help. After waiting for a few minutes, I realized that I couldn't waste even a single minute. I was losing a lot of blood, and being a doctor's son, I knew that losing too much blood could lead me to death. So I decided to struggle and climb up to the mountain road from where I fell. But I knew that was impossible for me. 80 feet, and even in that condition, minute by minute, I was losing tons of blood. Soon, I started feeling dizzy, and for a moment, I thought it was the end for me. This was the last day for me on this beautiful earth. I was scared of dying. I was just 17, and I had my whole life in front of me. I started thinking of my parents, and at that moment, my eyes were full of tears. I was really missing them. Out of stamina due to blood loss, I sat there and closed my eyes with no hope of survival. After some time, I saw a man in front of me who was holding my hand and looked tense. I thought I might be imagining things, so I remained in that state, thinking that there was no way I could be saved. But he started shouting, "Hey boy, are you alright? Don't worry, I'll save you. I'll take you to a hospital." I tried to open my eyes, but everything looks blurry. I don't know all the details, but I felt like he covered my head with some cloth. After that, he picked me up on his shoulder and ran out of there. After running for a few minutes, he reached a truck. He loaded me in and brought a bottle of water for me. He took the water and splashed it on my face to wake me up. That made me feel a little better. Now I could see his face. He was a young man about the same age as my dad. He took his shirt and wrapped it around my head to stop bleeding. I remember while driving, he would continuously ask me, "Keep your eyes open. Hey kid, don't die on me. You're losing too much blood." I was feeling sleepy and my eyes were closing on their own, but he kept on shaking me and tried to wake me up until we reached the hospital. Fortunately, it was the same hospital my mother worked at. After reaching there, I passed out. When I opened my eyes, I was inside the hospital lying on a bed. The doctor came to me and told me that it was a miracle that I survived. He had not seen someone surviving after such deep wounds. I got my head sewed up and they had to bind it with about 26 stitches. The last thing I remembered was that the strange man took me to the hospital, but how did I get in? I asked the doctors about it and I was shocked by what he replied. He told me that I was laying at the door of the hospital all covered in blood. I asked him again if there was some person with me who carried me here, but he said I was alone there and no one saw any person with me. I couldn't understand what was going on there. There was no way that he could have carried me to the hospital and left me out at the gate. After getting partially recovered, I tried to ask the hospital guards and staff if they saw someone with me that day, but nobody knew the fellow who took me to the hospital. It took me months to recover fully from my head injury. Even after that, I searched for him a lot, but didn't find anyone who knew about him. My parents told me that he was an angel whom God himself sent to save me, and the rest of my friends, with whom I shared this story, replied the same.
There had always been rumors of ghost sighting at 847 Acle Strait Road that links Norwich to the coast at Great Yarmouth. But I never believed them, since, there are always some urban myths or legends in the countryside that they believe to be true. And even though I had lived nearby, I never once saw something that could lead me to believe in the paranormal. I thought that people make up these stories, and those who don't know better start believing in them. That was before I actually witnessed it with my own 2 eyes. It was late at night, past midnight, and I was returning home to Halvergate after a long shift at work. My fiancé, Eden, who worked at the same place as me, was keeping me company in the car, and we were engaged in a light-hearted conversation, exchanging jokes and laughter along the way. We agreed that whoever drove us to work would be relieved of driving duties on the way back. So it was my turn to drive, despite feeling exhausted and sleep-deprived. However, Eden's lively humor kept me alert and awake behind the wheel, even though I doubt I would have fallen asleep while driving. As I drove down the Acle Road, my eyes were fixated on the road ahead. Suddenly, my attention was drawn towards a figure sitting in the middle of the road at a distance. A chill ran down my body as I hit the brakes immediately, causing Eden to look at me in confusion. With a trembling finger, I pointed toward the figure, who appeared to be staring directly at us with piercing eyes. Eden also noticed the man and nervously suggested that we drive around him, assuming he might be a crazy person. Despite the fear of the rumors surrounding the area, We couldn't help but wonder what the man was doing in the middle of the road. I turned the key in the ignition, and my car roared to life. Slowly, I began to drive forward, only to be stopped abruptly as I noticed a man who slowly stood up. He was the shadowy figure we saw from the distance, his face obscured by the darkness. As he approached us, I felt a knot form in my stomach. I hesitated, unsure what to do, while Eden urged me to drive around him. The man vanished into thin air without warning, leaving us shaken and confused. I hit the brakes, and we both looked around, trying to understand what had happened. There was no one in sight, so I resumed driving, my heart pounding as I navigated the dark streets, eager to reach the safety of home. We had been driving for a few miles since the eerie encounter with the ghostly man. However, my body still shook uncontrollably, and my heart raced with every passing moment. Suddenly, without any warning, the same spectral man appeared from nowhere and stood right in front of my car. My instincts kicked in, and I swerved the car to avoid hitting him. However, to my horror, he passed right through the car as if it were made of thin air. The unexpected shock caused me to lose my balance, and my car collided violently with a nearby tree. The impact was so severe that my head banged on the airbag, causing me to groan in agony. Though we were fortunate to have escaped with minor injuries, the car was damaged beyond repair. As I sat there shaking and disoriented, it was hard to shake off the feeling that we had just witnessed something beyond our comprehension. The ghostly figure had seemed so natural, yet at the same time, so otherworldly. Since I acted recklessly, I expected Eden to be angry with me. However, to my surprise, he didn't even scold me. Instead, he started worrying about my safety and reassured me that it was not my fault to be stuck in the middle of nowhere with ghosts possibly lurking around. He even went out of his way to make a few calls and arranged for his second cousin to pick us up. While waiting for his cousin to arrive, the chilling silence of the night was only interrupted by the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant hooting of an owl. My mind was racing with the thought of ghosts appearing at any moment, and I couldn't help but tremble with fear. But Eden's reassuring hug calmed me down, and I found myself crying in his arms. Despite my fear, he remained strong and acted as my pillar of support. I was sure he must have been scared, too, but he didn't let it show. His courage gave me the strength to face the situation, and I was grateful for his presence. As I looked up at him, the moonlight illuminated his face, making him look even more reassuring. I felt safe in his arms, and for a moment, I forgot about the danger that lurked in the shadows. About half an hour later, our eyes caught sight of a truck hurtling towards us at a breakneck speed. Our hearts were racing, and we braced ourselves for the worst, when to our relief, it came to a sudden halt right before us. A burly figure stepped out of the truck, and in a deep voice inquired about our safety. It was Eden's cousin, who had borrowed the truck from one of his friends. We both breathed a sigh of relief, and we got into the truck with him. As the truck rumbled down the road, I couldn't help but tremble with fear. The incident had shaken us both, and we were afraid we would encounter more ghostly apparitions on the way home. However, to our great relief, we avoided any more ghostly encounters that day. After that incident, I took over the responsibility of driving us to work each day, while Ethan would drive us back home. But despite not encountering any more paranormal activities, we occasionally heard rumors of ghost sightings around the area. People would claim to see different figures, like men, horses, and even houses appear out of nowhere. We stopped ignoring these stories and started believing that these experiences could be true, like ours. Every rumor we had heard about that place was accurate, and that incident remained a chilling reminder that there is still so much we don't know about the world we inhabit. There might be creatures lurking around us that we are unaware of, waiting to reveal themselves when we least expect it.
Possessed. Since my wife passed away, I lived in a cottage in the Maine woods with my daughter Patricia. But because I couldn't let my daughter outside, I ensured the house was locked. whenever I went hunting or collecting water. I always prepared delicious meals from the animals I hunted and served them to my daughter in her room. After serving her, I locked the room behind me. I understand that some may not agree with my decision to close my daughter in her room, but I had a compelling reason for doing so. Some days it was more challenging than others, for it felt lonely, but I managed to keep going. "Excuse me, I am lost and thirsty. Can I get some water?" While chopping wood for the fire, a mesmerizing sound captured my attention. Turning around, I spotted a woman standing a distance away, most likely in her mid-30s, outfitted in hiking attire. It was the first time in years that I had seen another living person besides me and my daughter, since no one had ever wandered into this area. "Yeah, sure, just wait here for a minute." After saying that, I went inside to get some water for her, though I felt hesitant. Upon my return, I found her comfortably seated on a nearby tree log, eagerly waiting for the water. I handed her the pot and resumed work while she quietly observed me. As she took a sip from the pot, she asked in a curious tone, "Do you live here?" Without breaking my concentration, I nodded in response, opting to remain focused on the task. "I'm Serene, by the way. Can I stay here for a few days if you don't mind?" I paused momentarily when she asked that, before responding in a firm tone, "I'm sorry, but no." It was not a decision I made lightly, since it was dangerous for her to stay here, and I couldn't risk being responsible for anything happening to her. Despite my concerns, she continued to plead with me, explaining that she had become separated from her group days ago and had been wandering ever since. She stressed that staying outside, with all the wild animals lurking about, would be even more dangerous. I took a huge sigh in response. "Fine, but do not ask any more questions and leave as soon as possible," I stated firmly, gesturing for her to accompany me inside. Little did I know then that my decision, out of pity, to provide her shelter would jeopardize her life. I directed her to an unoccupied room and warned her never to go upstairs while she was there. However, she appeared curious about why, but refrained from vocalizing her query. After that day, I took her with me whenever I went to hunt, since I did not trust her. My thoughts that she would leave after a day or two turned out to be false, because she began to capture my heart like a siren, and it wasn't long before she firmly denied leaving my house. By then, I had fallen so hard for her that I did not want her to go either. As a result, I forgot all about the dangers she could face for living here. One day, she finally asked, "Is someone living on the upper floor?" I was taking food for Patricia when her question made me halt. I had become so comfortable living with her since she never asked questions and followed my instructions to avoid going upstairs that I forgot my actions could seem suspicious to her. "Did you go there behind my back?" I asked angrily as I turned toward her, making her flinch from my sudden reaction. No, I was just asking because you always take food and water upstairs." I sighed long and responded, "Don't worry about it. I'm not a bad person." I don't know why I said that, but how she trembled from my sight seemed like I needed to say that. She nodded her head and turned around to the kitchen. I needed to tell her the truth if I didn't want to lose Serene. I grabbed her hand and took her to my bedroom, where I took a photo album from my safe and showed her my wife and little Patricia's pictures. She looked at me in confusion, hoping to get the answer to why I was showing my ex-wife's picture to her. It was when my daughter was 7. We visited this cottage for a family vacation. I saw her eyes red when I pulled her away from my wife's dead body. It was hard for me to speak, and tears had begun to fall out of my eyes. Did Patricia killed... I nodded before she could finish her question. She is possessed, Serene. I know my sweet daughter. She is a kind soul, but I'm scared of her. I barely finished the sentence and started wailing like a child. Serene still looked shocked from all this. Then is the person living? I nodded again. Judging by her expressions, I figured she needed some time alone to process everything, so I left her alone to give food to my daughter. The next day, Serene asked me if she could serve food to Patricia. I hesitated, but realized it could not be avoided, so I took her. There was a wooden rod that I used to carry inside with food, since I never knew when she could end up having an episode. But as I walked with Serene that day, she seemed calm sitting on her bed. Patricia, this is Serene. She will be serving your food from now on, I told her. And without turning to us, she replied, I know her. I have been watching her with you from there. She pointed to her room's tiny window as she said that. I placed the food and fresh water near her bedside table and told her that I had placed fresh water and clean clothes in her bathroom this morning when she was sleeping, before exiting her room with Serene, who seemed to be looking at Patricia with pity in her eyes. It's necessary for our safety, I said, as I locked the door and headed downstairs. Serene volunteered to serve her breakfast the following day, and even though I was anxious, I allowed her. I instructed her to carry the wooden rod with her when entering before she left. About 20 minutes passed, and when she still didn't return, I went upstairs to check on her, only to find the room door open and Serene groaning in a pool of blood. I rushed to her side, but she died after muttering that she should have believed me. My eyes scanned the room, and my daughter was nowhere to be found, and that was when I heard her footsteps. I grabbed the rod and tried to look for her when a knife swung at me, injuring my arm. Patricia's eyes were red, just like the day she killed her mother. My entire body started trembling, and my mind kept screaming to run. I ran to the attic and hid there, hoping she wouldn't find me, so I could run to the exit when the chance arrived. But as I sit here in pain, bleeding, muffling with my fingers, stuffed in my mouth as her footsteps keep getting closer, I don't know if I will be alive the next day, but I'm praying that whatever has possessed my daughter leaves her, so she can live in peace like others.
There was a thread on the main page asking cops if they have ever experienced anything creepy or odd at a crime scene. I posted the following story, and some people said I should submit it over here. I'm new here, so be gentle. This is the entire post, but the second story is the one that got the most attention. I've seen a lot of suicides, but one sticks out. This elderly female had her adult daughter living with her. She called us because she hadn't seen her daughter for 2 days and hadn't heard her moving around upstairs. The stairway going up was very narrow, and at the top was a direct 90-degree turn into the bedroom. The mother was too elderly to climb the stairs, so she called us. We get there and enter the bedroom and find the daughter dead. She hung herself by tying the rope from her robe around her neck and the other end to the bedpost. Then she just laid on the floor and let her weight compress the rope. Seemed odd because she could have easily just sat up or lifted herself up to keep from being strangled. Almost wouldn't thought her body would have done it on its own as a defense mechanism. Anyway, we untie her and check vitals, but she's gone. We need to check the body for signs of trauma, so we do that. As we're turning her over, the air escapes from her lungs in a long, soft sigh, and I feel the air blow over my arm. Grossed me out big time. Anyway, we couldn't get her out of the room because the stairway was too narrow. Ambulance arrives, and we strap her to a backboard and lower her out the window and down the ladder of the fire truck. I felt terrible for the mother because she was in hysterics, and her daughter being tossed out the upstairs window with the whole neighborhood watching. I never found out any details about her body afterwards, so I don't know if she took pills and then laid down and passed out, etc. But that method of suicide struck me as very odd. Next, got an alarm call to a home where someone had committed suicide the year before. The house was still owned by the family, but it sat unused. No one lived there. Another officer and I clear the house and advise dispatch that everything is kosher. No forced entry anywhere, but the back door was unlocked. We contacted the owner, and he told us he leaves it unlocked. Whatever. Anyway, we're in the house just looking around, remarking how it's a shame that the house just sits there unused. The other officer goes to take a leak, and I'm standing there in the living room when I hear footsteps upstairs. Now, we check the entire upstairs, each room, every closet, bathroom, etc. My partner yells from the bathroom, asking if those are footsteps. He comes out zipping up and we rush upstairs. Nothing. Doors to the rooms are open. We check each room again, each closet, everywhere. The upstairs is flat out empty. There wasn't even furniture left in the house. He's in one room, and I'm in another when I feel this coldness enter the room. It was just a cold that felt like it encompassed my entire body. Then it was as if someone in front of me shoved me with both hands. It was a very distinct feeling of two hands shoving me backwards by pushing my chest. I'm a cop. Normally someone shoves you and it's game on. But this time there was no one there, just an empty room. I must have sat there with a stupid look on my face for maybe a second or two. Then I left the room completely creeped out. I met my buddy in the hallway and he tells me I look weird. I explained to him exactly what had just happened, and he agrees that the place is incredibly creepy, suggesting that we leave immediately. It was daytime, and the house was fully lit, as there were no curtains or shades on any of the windows. Later, I told my supervisor about it, and he mentioned that he had responded to an alarm call there as well, and as soon as he went inside, he got that same creepy feeling where it feels like you're being watched.